Soul-to-soul relationships. Nice title and topic. And it's resting on largely two sources. One source is Srimad Bhagavatam, and a section from Srimad Bhagavatam that I was told some of the devotees here wanted me to speak about anyways, which is the teachings of Queen Kunti. Anybody here needs an introduction to who is Queen Kunti? Okay. You know who Arjuna is. So Arjuna's mother was Queen Kunti. And there's a situation in Queen Kunti's life where after the Battle of Kurukshetra was finished, the Pandavas, as was the culture of the time, the elder brother, Yudhishthira, became king. And Krishna had come, and during the war, the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna made a promise he wouldn't fight. Balaram also didn't fight. Balaram, he went on pilgrimage. But he came back but he didn't fight and Krishna didn't fight, but Krishna became, instead, the charioteer of Arjuna, but he wouldn't fight. And all of Krishna's armies, which were massive, were on the other side. So anyway, battle is over, and some other things happened after the battle, but it's now time for Krishna to go back. So geographically, the capital was Hastinapur, which is now Delhi, or New Delhi, and then Krishna's going back, which is west, to Dwarka, all the way to the seaside. And it's a big event. Krishna's leaving after being with them for quite some time, and victory, etc., etc. And so he's about to get on his chariot. You'll see the painting shortly. And Queen Kunti has privileges because she's the queen. She kind of works her way through the crowd and comes right up to Krishna's chariot. And she doesn't say, please don't go, but she says, please don't go. And so we're covering two of the prayers of Queen Kunti to Krishna just in that juncture of time. It's very celebrated verses, and that's one of the references. It's in relation to Queen Kunti's prayers. And then that section of Queen Kunti's prayers is being discussed in Priti Sandarbha. So now it's a little background of what Priti Sandarbha is, because at the bottom, Srila Jiva Goswami is one of the six Goswamis of Vrindavan. You're with that one, right? No. Lord Chaitanya had many exalted persons who were followers of Lord Chaitanya, great devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Amongst them, 6 of them he specifically sent to Vrindavan with the eldest of them, Rupa and Sanatan, with 2 specific assignments. 1, write books. Because he didn't write books. Lord Chaitanya didn't write books. He gave thorough instructions, details, and empowered them to write, to expand on what he taught, resting upon what Scripture says, but write books on the science of devotion. And to reestablish the lost places of Krishna's pastimes, because some 4,500 years before, where the places were lost. So identify where they are. That's an interesting mission. And let it become known to the world. These are places of Krishna's pastimes. Those two assignments. So there were 6 of them, most celebrated. There were more than 6, but 6 especially celebrated personalities. And one of those personalities was Jiva. Jiva was their nephew, or their Jiva's father died when he was young. So his 2 uncles became like his father. There's Rupa and Sanatan and Jiva. So there's 3 of the 6 Goswamis. Voluminous writings came from Jiva Goswami, and perhaps most noted and celebrated, and especially important because it encapsulates the entire teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, is the Sandarbhas. Sandarbha is a term that it's an ancient term of a particular type of literature, and Jiva Goswami, being a scholar, he knew what that type of literature was. He wrote a book. One of his books was explaining what is a Sandarbha and how does it work? What are its composition parts? And he followed the standard or the rule of a Sandarbha, and he wrote 6 of them. The 6 Sandarbhas, or Sat Sandarbhas. And this is the final of those 6. The first 4 are teaching in different ways the relationship of all things to the source of all things. The Sanskrit term, sambandha, nice term. So the relationship between the source of all things and that which comes from the source of all things. So there's 4, they have terms. And then the 5th was, when one acts in that relationship, what does it look like? How to act in one's relationship with the source of all things. Bhakti Sandarbha. And then this is number 6, which is, when you act in that relationship with the source of all things, what does it look like? What's the mature stage? The fruit? The result, the consequence, the product that comes from the highest stages of bhakti. And that's this the word that he likes is Priti. The word that we're accustomed to more is prema. You've heard the word prema. Prema means love. So prema bhakti is the highest stage of bhakti. The stage where pure love, there's nothing else. Unmixed, pure love, prema. And he uses prema also, but he likes the word priti because priti is it's very specific. It's describing the affective part of that mature stage of bhakti. Because bhakti, by definition, is activities performed in relation to the Supreme. So the mature stage is with unalloyed relationship. And specifically, priti is the affection that one feels in an unalloyed relationship. What's the affection? The feeling side. So that's what this book is. Nice. Priti Sandarbha. In Priti Sandarbha, there are 2 verses. We're going to hear them sung. We can sing along with them if we like. But there are 2 verses from Queen Kunti's prayers that Jiva Goswami points to and expands and explains and touches on it from different angles, what pure affection and love for Krishna looks like. And Queen Kunti is one such person. She has priti for Krishna, love for Krishna, great deep feelings. So that's the There's two references, Srimad Bhagavatam, Kunti's prayers, and Priti Sandarbha, where he discusses two verses from Kunti's prayers. And the target is, at least from my purposes this evening, is soul-to-soul relationships. What's it like? Needs is a word that's a term that has a lot of meaning these days. People have their needs and they have their wants and so forth. And if you don't meet your needs, then you're disturbed. So according to the teachings, the Vedic texts, the Vaishnava texts, there's a need to love and be loved. Now what happens when there's a need that's not met? You feel frustrated. Naturally so. Now here's one of our acharyas, in fact it's Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta, who writes in this collection Amrita Vani, which means instructions. Vani means instructions in eternal life. Strong. There is no love in this material world because everywhere here has a conflict of interest. So let's do it the other way. Love is where there's no conflict of interest. Now, how do you have no conflict of interest when you have two people? Because two people may want, one person may want this, there may be a good match, but there's going to be some times when they want separate things. Or their interest, maybe want separate things isn't the best. Their interest may be variegated. So in a loving relationship, while there's different personalities and ways of doing things, just like this young girl and her father. So, they're different. Not your daughter? Yes, okay. They're different. That's nice. That's nice. When it's a loving relationship, and by transcendental definition, there's no conflict of interest. Anyway, we'll refer back to this because the absence of a conflict of interest is they have the same interest. And when there's the same interest, then that's what real love is. And real love is otherworldly. So let's say it the other way. In the transcendental realm or in the spiritual realm, there's variegatedness. Abundant variegatedness. But there's no separate interest. Because that no separate interest means the happiness of Krishna is everyone's interest. Now supposing this person says Krishna's interest, Krishna's happiness is this. It happens in our life. Sometimes another person says Krishna's happiness is that. And a third person says Krishna's happiness is something else. Now that looks like a conflict. Sometimes it turns into a conflict. However, the resolution of the differences is there's not separate interest, because the one interest is Krishna's happiness. And that's where there's love. And when there's Krishna's happiness at the center, then there's love. And that it's easy, not just easier, but it's easy to work out differences. Because differences will be there, but no separate interest. And in a loving relationship, Krishna's interest is at the center, and no one's keeping score. Wait a minute, I yielded to your idea of what's Krishna's interest. Now it's your turn to yield to my idea of what's Krishna's interest. It's not fair. So that's not exactly what no separate interest means. It doesn't. No one's keeping score, because Krishna's interest is the objective. No separate interest. So it's a nice image. There's a lotus flower, and there's the reflection of the lotus flower. And somehow they made this image such that the reflection is moving, because when water is moving, then the image gets a little distorted. And it's the same thing as chapter 15 Bhagavad Gita. Maybe you are familiar with the chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna speaks of a tree where the roots grow up and the branches grow down. There's no such tree, except in reflection on the bank of a lake or body of water, where in the reflection, so this world is a reflection, where the stem is growing up and the flower that's resting on the stem is growing down. So it's upside down and it's distorted. There's the appearance of love in this world because there's love in the spiritual realm. In the realm of reality, real love is otherworldly. And in the worldly sense, things get distorted because there's separate interest. The problem is not variety. The problem is, where do you repose that nature that you have, or your tendencies that you have, or something or something? This image is meant to show what we already know, Bhagavad Gita 101, which is the real identity of who we are is the soul. That's that little skinny guy in the middle. And then there's coverings. There's the subtle covering, there's the gross covering, and there's the presence of the soul within this animating both the gross and the subtle coverings. And this is meant to show light going out in the sense that consciousness, which is from the soul, expands beyond the body even. Like consciousness goes out into the world around us. Like I'm looking out the window and there's the park, and on the other side of the park there's cars zooming by this way, that way. So I'm sitting over here, but because my vision allows me, my consciousness to extend beyond, then I can be conscious of, at least visually, I can be conscious of something that's going on even outside of me. What to speak of inside of me. My thoughts, thinking, feeling, willing, the subtle feature, and the consciousness of my body, the pains and pleasures of my body, and consciousness extends out. There was a phrase that I heard Srila Prabhupada say enough times that I started taking a lot of interest in it. What did he mean by the soul is both conscious and consciousness? So I pondered on it, and eventually I came to this understanding. There's a phrase in the Upanishad portion of the Vedas. It's very terse, short Sanskrit statements that explain things. It's reality, and one of those is this one that just like a lamp is both luminous, just like the wick and the ghee wick, and it's sticking out of this clay cup, and there's light from the flame. So a lamp is luminous. And the Upanishads say it illuminates things in the room, like pots and plates. Uses that phrase. So without the light, you may not be able to see the pots and plates, but you can see the pots and plates because the luminosity of the lamp. As the lamp is both luminous and it spreads light throughout a room, similarly the soul is both conscious and consciousness. So while we're conscious and consciousness, and we have a soul need for a loving relationship, need to love and be loved. It's of the soul. Nothing wrong with it. It's quite natural. It's quite healthy, quite wholesome. To know how to have that relationship where the relationship is pure. It's a genuine relationship of love where the connection with another person is unimpeded, uninterrupted, it's unmixed, it doesn't have separate interest. So it's where that relationship has its direct connection with Krishna. This illustration is showing a devotee. I know her, it's Sikandini. Sikandini is chanting japa. And the hand, it shows in the diagram here, it's like her hand is reaching out to Krishna when chanting. And the via media is her spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And the holy name is not different than Krishna. Krishna is reaching back. So there's this connection with Krishna, with a soul at the center. The center is her spiritual master. And all around this is the Maha Mantra. So that's just a little setting the scene to help understand soul-to-soul relationships. And as soon as I make the next click, it's going to start making the recording happen. So what you're going to hear is a nice devotee named Sri Rupa Dasi. She's going to sing with some musical accompaniment. And you can hear what she says, and then you can, because she's going to sing it twice, you can sing back if you like to sing. And this is the first of two verses. It's text 41 of Queen Kunti's prayers. As soon as I click, the painting is going to show Queen Kunti is coming to the edge of Krishna's chariot as he's leaving to go back to Dwarka. And she is offering her prayers unto Krishna. So this is unto Krishna. Here we go. And I think I didn't do a sound check, so let's see how this works. Tata Vishvesha Vishatma Vishvamurti Svakeshu Me Sneha Pashamimam Chindhi Pandushu Vishnishu Tata Vishvesha Vishatma Vishvamurti Svakeshu Me Sneha Pashamimam Chindhi Pandushu Vishnishu Tata Vishvesha Vishatma Vishvamurti Svakeshu Me Sneha Pashamimam Chindhi Pandushu Vishnishu Tata Vishvesha Vishatma Vishvamurti Svakeshu Me Sneha Pashamimam Chindhi Pandushu Vishnishu. While still looking at the verse, we'll go through a couple of the words. Vishva, you see several times, 3 times. Vishva means the universe. So, Lord of the universe, the Isha of the universe, Vishvesha. And then Vishva again, and Atman, the soul of the universe. And Vishvamurti, the personality of the form of the universe. So this is her nephew, because, Krishna is her nephew. Kunti's brother, Kunti had a brother, and the brother of Kunti was Krishna's father, so they're nephews. But by family relation, she's saying this to her nephew. But by spiritual understanding, it's not just nephew. So she's addressing him as the Supreme. Sneha means affection. You see in the third line? Sneha means affection. And chindi means cut or sever the tie of my affection. For whom? Pandu, or the sons of Pandu, because the sons of Pandu, her husband is Pandu. And the sons of Pandu are her sons. So it's referring to, please cut, sever the tie of affection that I have for my sons. Sounds impersonal, but it's not what she's asking. And Vrishni means her father. So Prabhupada explains, a woman has two families that she feels close affinity for, her own family, her own children, etc., and her father, and her father's family and children. And those are two natural kinds of affection that a woman might have for her own family and for the family of her father. So in this verse, we'll go further with it, but she's asking for the tie of affection that she feels for these two groups of people to be severed. It sounds cold-hearted, but that's not her. That's not what she's saying. Let's go forward to see what she's saying. Prabhupada's purport, a pure devotee of the Lord is ashamed to ask anything of self-interest from the Lord, but the householders are sometimes obliged to ask favors from the Lord, being bound by the tie of family affection. Kunti was conscious of this fact. Therefore she prayed to the Lord to cut off the affectionate tie from her own kinsmen, the Pandavas and Vrishnis. No, she's not asking to let me not have any affection, but we'll see, because it's natural. In his commentary to explain this sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, Prabhupada writes, oh, look this, Priti Sandarbha. Jiva Goswami writes, Kunti is thinking, if Lord Krishna departs from Hastinapur, that will be inauspicious for the Pandavas, that's her sons. And if he does not depart from Hastinapur and return to Dwarka, that will be inauspicious for the Vrishnis, because her father and the father's family live in Dwarka. So it would be inauspicious for them if Krishna doesn't leave. Her heart, thus agitated by competing affections for these two sides of her family, Queen Kunti herein prays that the affection she bears for her kinsmen be destroyed. The truth is that when she sees how the two sides of her family dearly love Lord Krishna, her own love for Lord Krishna increases. Therefore, on the pretext of saying, please destroy my affection for my kinsmen, Kunti is really praying, please do not leave the association of either of the two sides of my family. Now, if he stays, he's not maintaining the association with one part of the family. And if he goes, he's neglecting his association with another side of the family. So she's saying it in terms of taking responsibility for her affection, but she's asking him, he who can do anything, please maintain association for both sides of the family. Now, Krishna can expand himself. He could go and not go at the same time. He could not go, but expand himself and go. So she's not asking him to do that, but she's helpless, feeling tie of affection. If you leave, then my sons. If you don't leave, my father's family will be missing you. Here's a reference from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Do you know what that book is? Chaitanya Charitamrita? A little bit, at least conceptually. So this is in the early section, Adi Lila chapter 4. And we're going to learn some little technical terminology that comes up in Priti Sandarbha as well. There's ingredients in a loving exchange. Different ingredients are involved in the exchange of love between ashraya and vishaya. What does ashraya mean? Ashraya means the abode of love, like your heart, and vishaya means the object of your heart. Vishaya and ashraya, the abode of love and the object of love. The abode of love and the object of love. They're just Sanskrit terms. It's quite okay. So there's ingredients involved in the exchange of love between those two, the abode and the object of love. And it gives some definitions. We're going to go into it a little bit. Vibhav. Vibhav is defined this way. There's two categories, alambana and udipana. Sorry for the technology terms, but it's fundamental in a relationship. Now, you don't have to use Sanskrit terms to take a close look at what a relationship is, but the Sanskrit terms make it simple if you want to understand them. And udipana, that's really easy. Udipana is that which stimulates the feelings, or stimulates ecstatic feelings. Stimulation of ecstatic love is udipana. And when ecstatic love is stimulated, there are two persons, there are two parts that are stimulated in those ecstatic feelings. And it's the ashraya and it's the vishaya. The person, the object of love, and the abode of love. And both are stimulated by udipanas. The coming together of a subject and object is called alambana. The subject and object. So the abode of love and the object of love, or the subject and object, when they come together and meet, it's alambana. And both the subject and object are brought to the position of ecstatic feelings by the stimulations of those ecstatic feelings. That's what Chaitanya Charitamrita says, and here's what Priti Sandarbha says. We already heard these two terms, ashraya and vishaya. So here's Chaitanya Charitamrita. The coming together of a subject and object is alambana. Alambana may be further divided into ashraya and vishaya. That's the object and the subject. By seeing that both sides, that's the Pandavas and Vrishnis, or her sons and her father's family, by seeing that both sides have the same object of affection, that's Krishna, both her affection for both groups as vessels of the Lord's Priti increased. Is it clear what's being expressed? Should I pause and explain it a little more? Clear? It's clear. She's pure. She doesn't have any agenda. She's pure. And she has pure feelings for her sons and her father's family. When she knows, because she's pure, how much priti, how much feelings of love both groups have, as she's contemplating, then her love increases. Her love is stimulated by how much love these two parties have. May both sides never become detached from you. Here's Prabhupada's furthering explain that verse 41 from Kunti's prayers. It is sometimes experienced that the Lord, out of his special affinity towards a weak devotee, breaks the family affection by force of circumstance arranged by his all-powerful energy. By so doing, he causes the devotee to become completely dependent on him, and thus he clears the path for his going back to Godhead. There's a conditioned soul trying to leap out of the ocean of material existence, and Krishna is picking him up. Here's another nice example that you may have a little familiarity with. This is Krishna's holding a chariot wheel, Arjuna's chariot wheel, and our Krishna is rushing with the raised chariot wheel, ready to smash Grandfather Bhishma. And Grandfather Bhishma is this great devotee. Great devotee. He's one of the most celebrated, 12 most celebrated authorities in all of history. And Krishna is ready to smash him with a chariot wheel. And the reason Krishna is doing that, although it looks bad, is because Bhishma wanted it. Why did Bhishma want to get smashed by the chariot wheel from Krishna? It's a long story, and I'll make it short, but it's a nice story. One of the things that was celebrated about Grandfather Bhishma is he always kept his word, because I learned this as a young boy. A man is only as good as his word. You give your word, you keep your word. If for some reason you can't keep your word, you go to the person and say, circumstantially, I can't do as I promised. Can I have pardon from you for that which I promised to you? Or something like that. So a man is only as good as his word. And Bhishma Dev never broke his word. But Krishna did something that caused Bhishma to break his word. It's a long story, but it's a nice... There was... Bhishma Dev was fighting on the other side. He was fighting on the other side based upon a principle of dharma, that because he was being maintained by the royal family, he was obliged to be on the side of the royal family. Are you following? You're squinting. It's okay. Bhishma was fighting on the side of Duryodhana. Duryodhana was a bad guy. Duryodhana and his brothers wanted to usurp the kingdom. Although Yudhisthira was, by law, the rightful king. But he stole it anyways. By this and that, skullduggery. He was a bad guy. He tried to murder the Pandavas several times in several things. So he was a bad guy. And Bhishma was being maintained by Duryodhana. Because he was not married, he was just being maintained by them. So he felt obliged, or by dharma he's obliged, to be on that side. Although he knew he was wrong. So it's a balancing sometimes between two wrongs and two principles, and how do you do the... Anyway, by design, by Krishna's design, he's on the opposite side. And Duryodhana one night, I'm doing the longer version, one night during the 18-day battle, Duryodhana came to the tent where Bhishma Dev was staying and said, Duryodhana, you're our commander-in-chief. You're invincible. You're not trying because you have affection for the Pandavas. I challenge you. Fight with your full capacity. So he made a vow, which Krishna caused him to break. His vow was, you see these 5 arrows? With these 5 arrows, I will kill the 5 Pandavas tomorrow. Is that okay? Yes, very good. In fact, you keep the arrows. When you come to greet me in the morning, as you do every morning, you give me those 5 arrows. These 5 arrows, I will kill the 5 Pandavas, all 5 of them. Very good. Thank you. And he left. However, he's taken a vow that Krishna makes him break. So Krishna, being omniscient, he knew that Bhishma had taken this vow. So he turned to Arjuna and said, Arjuna, remember long, long ago when you saved Duryodhana's life? And when you saved Duryodhana's life, that happened, he gave you a vow. The vow was, you take from me anything that you like. Remember that, Arjuna? Yes. Go to him tonight. Don't ask for the kingdom. Ask for the 5 arrows. He'll know what you mean. Ask for the 5 arrows. It's Krishna's playfulness. So Arjuna went and asked for the 5 arrows, and he got the 5 arrows. Next morning, Duryodhana went to greet Grandfather Bhishma. Grandfather Bhishma said, "Where are the 5 arrows?" He said, "Oh, yesterday Arjuna came to me after you gave me the arrows, and he asked for the 5 arrows, and I had already promised him anything he would like, so I gave him the 5 arrows." Grandfather Bhishma said, "That's Krishna." All right. Krishna has forced me to break my vow. I'm going to force Krishna to break his vow. Watch me. I take another vow. Either Krishna breaks his vow, or I'm going to kill Arjuna. So that day, Bhishma fought so fiercely, directing everything towards Arjuna. Now, Arjuna is a very powerful warrior, not lightweight, very powerful. But got down towards the end of the day, because in Vedic culture, when the sun sets, that's it. No more fighting for that day. Towards the end of the day, Arjuna was in big trouble. Bhishma Dev was fighting so fiercely, and his chariot broke. And Krishna's the chariot driver. So Arjuna is down there trying to fix his chariot, and Bhishma is coming, charging towards Arjuna to finish him. So what did Krishna do? He picked up the chariot wheel. Now he got a Sudarshan chakra, he doesn't need a chariot wheel. He could have finished Bhishma Dev 15 million different ways. But he picked up the chariot wheel and started charging to smash Bhishma with Arjuna's chariot wheel. Arjuna, as you see, is holding him back. No, no, no. Don't kill Bhishma is my grandfather. Don't smash him. Don't kill him. Because he's feeling affection. Sneha, feeling affection for Grandfather Bhishma. And Grandfather Bhishma, that's just exactly what Grandfather Bhishma wanted. He dropped his bow, opened his arms, and said, smash me. Now, it's not that he wanted to get smashed. He wanted Krishna to show that he holds the affections he holds for his devotee even more than his own word. So he broke his word. It's called Bhakta Vatsala. Vatsala means he's the protector of his devotee. Just like parental affection in Sanskrit is called Vatsalya. Same root. Vatsala, Bhakta Vatsala. Krishna is the protector of his devotees. He feels a special affection for his devotees. So Bhishma knew what Krishna is going to do. If I take this vow, he's not going to hold his vow above protecting Arjuna. He's going to protect Arjuna above his vow. So he's going to break his vow, as he made me break mine. So that's the scene, which is explaining this previous little section. Sometimes, Prabhupada wrote in connection to verse 41, sometimes Krishna is especially kind to a weak devotee, and he'll break the connections such that there's only one shelter left, and that's the personality of Godhead. Krishna shows special kindness when he does like that. And the devotee feels, like Bhishma Dev. And what happened was, just at that moment, the conch blew because the sun had set, means the battle is over. Krishna dropped the chariot wheel. Grandfather Bhishma didn't get smashed. Everything was nice. So now we're going to move on to the next verse, which is text 42. This is that same fellow jumping out of the ocean of material existence. And we'll hear the recording, and you can respond if you like.
Dear Madhupati Sakrit Rati Mudvahata Datta Kevalgham Danvati Tvayi Menaya Vishaya Dear Madhupati Sakrit Rati Mudvahata Datta Kevalgham Danvati Tvayi Menanya Vishaya Matir Madhupati Sakrit Yati Mudvahata Datta Kevalgham Danvati Tvayi Menanya Vishaya Matir Madhupati Sakrit Yati Mudvahata Datta
I put a couple of words in big letters at the top in purple. Ananya Vishaya. Ananya means no other. And Vishaya, we heard that term already. Vishaya is the object of love. There's the subject and there's the object in a loving relationship. So Krishna is the object of Kunti's love, and she's asking that let there be no other object of love for me, without being diverted to anyone else. Then another word in big letters is ratim. Rati. Rati is a nice Sanskrit word. It means affection or attraction. Let my attraction go to no one else but you. She's praying to Krishna. So that it's connected. It's definitely connected to the previous verse. Please remove the affection for both my sons and my father's family. That's the material portion of the affection, leaving only the spiritual portion of my affection. That's what she's saying, actually. And now, her affection has been increased because of knowing the love that her father's family and her sons have for Krishna. Her own affection has increased, and now she's exhibiting her own affection, reaching this peak. Let there be no other object of my affection. Ananya Vishaya. Here's a photograph of the river Ganga, because this is the sea, the last line. Gange Vagyam Udanvati. That like the Ganges flows forever towards the sea. Let my mind be like that. May my mind also carry its affection to you, who are the shelter of all the devotees, just as the Ganga does not consider any obstacles on its course. My mind should not consider any obstacles that may arise by thinking of you. Now, are there obstacles in life? There's obstacles in life. In the morning class, there was some discussion about Hanuman meeting 4 obstacles in fulfilling some service for Lord Ramachandra. Life has obstacles. Her prayer is, obstacles may arise, they will arise. That the flow of my mind, my rati, my attraction for you, not be deterred at all, whatever the obstacle might be. That my affection for you and my attraction for you be unchecked, like the river Ganges is unchecked, flowing towards the sea. To cut off the tie of all other affections does not mean complete negation of the finer elements, like affection for someone else. This is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others, because this is a symptom of life. The symptoms of life, feelings of attraction, etc., cannot be annihilated. Only the objective has to be changed. The objective is it's one purpose, one intention. Going back to that statement by Bhaktisiddhanta, in this world there's no love because there's a conflict of interest. So when there's no conflict of interest, there's only one objective. So the objective of her father's family, the objective of her sons, and the objective of herself, they're not different. So that Krishna's happiness be achieved, here's again revisiting this, sever my ties of affection. Relationships of the soul established in relation with the Supreme Soul are factual relations. When Kunti Devi wanted to cut off the family relation, she meant to cut off the relations of the skin. The skin relation is the cause of material bondage, and the relation of the soul is the cause of freedom. So she's asking for the material portion of her affection to be removed, which leaves the spiritual portion of her affection that can't be removed. Prabhupada writes, this relation of the soul to soul can be established by the via medium of the relation with the super soul. So here's a photograph or drawing of a nice Chinese man. And he has some characteristics. He's got a nice little beard. And it looks like he got a smoking pipe. He doesn't probably follow all the regular principles. And he's got a friend. And they have some similar characteristics. They're both elderly, and he has a nice big beard. And so there's external things that are similar. And then the internal thing that for sure is similar is one has a spirit soul inside, and the other has a spirit soul inside. That little skinny figure, that's the soul. And they have different colors because the souls are different in nature, but they have something that's similar also. They both have a super soul within their heart. And they have a friendship, but it's a soul-to-soul relationship when super soul is the via media. They're acknowledging their friendship is made possible because of the super soul. And then they have differences of nature and likes and things like that. But they have a nice soul-to-soul relationship because super soul is the via media. Seeing in the darkness is not seeing, but seeing by the light of the sun means to see the sun and everything else, which was unseen in the darkness. This is the way of devotional service. Remember back in the beginning portion, there was that clay cup, a lamp, and a ghee wick sticking out of it. And so there's luminous, when the ghee wick is lit, it's luminous, and it gives light. So also, because of the presence of the light of the sun, or everything becomes luminous. So the way of devotional service, where Krishna is at the center, the object of affection is with Krishna at the center, then we can have soul-to-soul relationships. This, towards the upper left corner, you see VCT, that means Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. He wrote some commentary on this verse, and we're almost done. Kunti is praying, may my mind hold affection for you without any obstacle. Udva means to flow strongly. The mind should not think of anything else. Ananya Vishaya. Your devotees are non-different from you, and thus, without affection for them, affection for you cannot take place. It is not possible that this could please you. I know that. Therefore, let my mind have attraction to no one except you and your devotees. So this is the follow-up verse is let my mind and rati, my attraction, go only to you. So while I'm contemplating the split between your leaving and staying, let me resolve it by my affection for you increasing, and no obstacle impede my affection going to you. I pray to cut off affectionate bonds with the Pandavas and Yadavas, who are your devotees. But since it is a prayer in front of you, it means cutting off only the material affection which arises from bodily identification. It's not cutting the affectionate relation with you. I want to cut that affection which causes bondage. So there's the essence of her prayer. There's a nice painting showing Krishna receiving this nice devotee Gopakumar in Goloka Vrindavan. On one side there's some cowherd boys, on the other side there's some gopis, and Krishna is ready to receive anyone that comes back to him in pure devotion. And here's Queen Kunti. If you can notice along that line that's showing where the Ganges flows, that's that same phrase from the verse, Gange Vagyam Udadvati, that my mind, like the flowing of the Ganges, meet no obstacle as my mind goes to you. And Ananya Sauradam, exclusive love for the Lord. And when that capacity awakens, then there's the capacity for soul-to-soul relationships. The door for love for others is open. This is our founder Acharya and his signature along with his picture. So from his teachings and his writings, and of course the other acharyas, we're given a picture of what a soul-to-soul relationship can look like. And that's it. So let's see if there's some discussion. Yes.
I guess one question that some of us have been wondering in the ashram.
Yeah. How to have better relationships.
How do you love someone when you see that they are a devotee of Krishna,
But
in very weird ways which defy logic?
that defies logic. That defies logic, you said?
Logic, they say they're devotees of Krishna, or they just say they're spiritual people, but their actions do not reveal that.
The actions do not, what?
Their actions
Do not what? Reveal that. Okay, I'm just asking because your voice trailed down as you ended your sentence. I didn't catch it. So the question specifically is what? How do we regard those persons? How do we regard the behaviors? How do we have a loving relationship with those personalities? Give me a target.
someone is there.
I get the situation. What's the question?
They are devotees of Krishna. They are not acting with the etiquette of a devotee. Sometimes they're justifying their actions using philosophy.
I got the picture. What's the question?
How to deal with such.
How to deal with it? Okay. largely, like everyone else in this material world, we're conditioned souls. And largely we respond to things impelled by the modes of nature. And the modes of nature tells us, do this, do that. Because we're conditioned souls, that's generally the voice that we hear. It's the modes of nature voice. But in Bhagavad Gita, there's another voice. And the other voice is at least moving towards the position of goodness, which is tangstatiksha swavarata. Tatiksha means to tolerate. Now, when you tolerate, doesn't mean you close your eyes and you don't see anymore. You take your intelligence, you turn it in the off position, and you become, dull. That's not what it. Tolerate is you can still discern from one thing and another thing, but the position from which you function, how do you deal with this? From a position of goodness. And from the position of goodness, one of the characteristics of goodness is you're tolerant. And tolerant doesn't mean everything's okay, but there's things that are. It doesn't represent the etiquette of a Vaishnava or the conduct of a Vaishnava, and you can discern it. Your discerning capacity stays in the on position. But something based upon your discerning capacity looks off. It's not on. And now, how do you deal with it? Starting point is the mode of goodness. Generally, it's not the mode of goodness. The mode of passion or ignorance. Generally, conditioned souls in this age. So it's starting with tolerance. You can discern, and then here's a nice teaching. When you become tolerant, when you're in the mode of goodness, you can be tolerant. And when you're in the mode of goodness, what happens is, one of the things that happens is your reasoning faculties expand. You're able to consider options in the mode of goodness, driven by the feature of goodness, that you wouldn't be able to consider if it was passion or ignorance. It's a nice example. I like visuals. I'm a visual guy. So there's in India, the villager has a cow. And when he takes the cow out in the morning, he has a rope around the cow's neck, and on the other end of the rope is a stake. And he wants to make sure the cow has some grass to graze, so sometimes the rope is a little longer, sometimes the rope is a little shorter. But it's that circumference that the cow can graze for the day. So when you become tolerant, or when you become situated in the mode of goodness, the rope gets longer. Your capacity to consider what are some of the options for me becomes greater. Your intelligence expands instead of shrinks, because you're in this reflective or tolerating mode. You're not judging, you're not acting, you're not speaking, you're pausing, you're in a reflective mode, and you're considering, what are some possibilities here? And one is you could just stay in that reflective mode. That's one option. And then you can have some other options because you're in reflective mode. You can consider what's best. But that becomes accessible to you or to me or to any one of us if you're in a reflective mode. Just this morning, there's somebody somewhere who has in a conflict, and he doesn't see anything but conflict. It's like everything is red. And so anything the other party or parties do, it's red. Because he's angry. Because he feels he's been trampled on. And just this morning, he ran another one past me. So what should I do? And I said, Shikshastaka 3. What's Shikshastaka 3? Shikshastaka is, although Lord Chaitanya didn't write books, it is said that he gave 8 ashtaka, he gave 8 instructions. Shiksha means instructions. So one of those is, the first 2 is the glories of the holy name, glories of the holy name. And then at the end of number 2, he says, unfortunately, I know all these things, but I don't have any attraction for the holy name. Nanuraga. Jodaiva idrishya nanuraga. I don't have any anurag. I don't have any attraction, although I know all these glories. I'm a devotee. Back to your question. I'm a devotee, they're a devotee. I recognize they're a devotee. And there's, my attraction is incomplete. And therefore I'm having difficulty handling or deciding how to handle, a situation that's challenging because there's behavior that's not becoming of a devotee. Although I know they're a devotee, just like I am. I'm imperfect, and hey, they're imperfect. Nothing else is new. So now, how do I handle it? How do I deal with it? So Shikshastaka 3 starts with Trinadapi Sunichena Toror Ivasahishnuna. It's how to get to the point where we have an attraction for the holy name. And it starts with humility. Like, duh. It starts with humility. Let's say it the other way. When there's ego that gets involved, back to Bhakti Siddhantas, when there's a difference of interest, supposing we don't have that ego, here's a person, and what their behavior or their conduct or their speech or whatever isn't befitting. I know from Scripture, and then they can justify what they're doing from Scripture. And so we have a clash. We're not getting along with one another. So the first step, I'm trying to respond to your question by these 2 examples, this young man today and Lord Chaitanya's teachings. It's tolerance, humility, and pridelessness. Here's another reference. Many of you like Bhagavad Gita, or have some appreciation for Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks 6 questions, and one of the 6 questions is, what is knowledge? And the object of knowledge. And when Krishna gives the answer to what is knowledge, the first 2 items of knowledge are amanetvam atam vidvam, humility and pridelessness. That's a symptom of one who's in knowledge. So if back to your question, how do we deal with it? Become situated in knowledge. And then you'll know how to deal with it. If you're not situated in knowledge, you're going to have clash. Supposing you're situated in knowledge, then at least you have access to options. The rope is longer. What's going to be appropriate? What's going to be inappropriate? What's going to be effective? What's going to be ineffective? What's going to increase the fire? What's going to put the fire out? What's going to get us, both me and this other person in the ashram, closer to proper conduct? Supposing I'm not there yet. Most of us are not there yet. Now what do? We clash, that's what we do. We follow, act like animals, and then animals have spats with other animals. Then they live peaceful for a while, and then they get spats. And so we could be like that. That's an option. It's not a good one. And then we can cultivate goodness. And the starting point of goodness is tang tatiksha swabharata. This is Bhagavad Gita chapter 2. Tatiksha, you tolerate. Or trinadapi sunicha. Like the trin I'm giving a long answer because I know it's an issue, not just here. It's an issue in our becoming devotees, and we mix with other people who are like us, not pure, and over there is another's not pure, then over there is another not pure, but they're devotees, and we're not pure. So now how do we become pure? I was just this morning going over Bhakti Siddhanta's teachings in this regard. And he has a very nice statement, one of many nice statements. Do not pry into the frailties of others. Do not make that your business. Make your business to see where your own heart is honeycombed with fault. Because one finds fault. It's one thing discerning, it's another finding fault. Discerning means this is this and that's that, and I see a distinction between this and that. Fault finding is making a judgment. Bad. Wrong. You're broken, you need to be fixed. Something like that. You're judgmental. And there's a tone involved, obviously, but besides the tone, just I'm up here and you're down there and I'm judging you. So judgmentalism or fault finding, don't pry into the frailties of others. Don't find fault in others, Bhakti Siddhanta. For by so doing, you're revealing the fact that your own heart is honeycombed with the very same faults. So now, supposing you're a discerning person, like Bhakti Siddhanta, or a pure devotee, or Queen Kunti, or somebody, and you can see what's what. So seeing what's what is not a problem. It's how does it strike your heart? And then what do you do about that? What did Prabhupada do when he saw the people in the West that were, uncultured and didn't know how to conduct themselves? He was very patient. So this is another principle. What to do? What can I do? How do I deal with it? Become pure. Because this is something that I remind myself regularly. Here's a situation like you described. Supposing Prabhupada was in this situation, what would happen? It would become pure because he's pure. I'm not able to make the situation pure because I'm not pure. The fault is over here, not over there. So let me make my project to become more pure, and then I can deal with helping others that need purification, get purification, if and only if my heart is pure, or to the degree that my heart is pure, I can help the situation. It is true. Otherwise, how is behavior going to become elevated without the influence of purity? It's not just knowing this is right and that's wrong. Discerning isn't sufficient. Based upon the question itself. I get it. Let me just... Okay, go ahead.
How do you do that without attacking?
It depends. I go back to the point I was just making. When there's purity in your heart, so the need is there. I perceive, rightly or wrongly, I perceive the need for protection. Innocent people, there's a possibility, or it's a dynamic that's happening. Innocent people may or are being damaged. And I perceive something needs to be done to protect innocent people. So you and I that may feel like that, one of the first things we do is we look inside. This is a Vaishnava principle of introspection. What's in my heart? Am I the hero? And I want to fix the situation? Not necessarily you, but this, it's a Vaishnava. Well, look, to what degree is false ego operating in me? If you don't make that step, then it just opens the door for false ego to jump in, because it's really easy because we're accustomed to it. It's life in the material world. So the introspective can just be quick, but evaluating, what's my motive here? Is it really that I want, then if protection is something that's needed, then comes the mode of goodness evaluation of what's the best method. It doesn't have to take, days or weeks or years, but it can be, just an operation, a step in what to do. You start to scan, what are my options? I'm thinking, as I'm speaking, I'm thinking about a situation that recently confronted me, and I had to make some choices about what I'm going to do, because I perceive persons are at risk. And it's my duty to give protection. So what I decided to do in this particular case, in a transparent manner, I conveyed my understanding of why I perceive and feel that persons are at risk and they need to be protected. You're the authority. I'm not going to do anything more than just relate to you because it's some other part of the country and That's their authority. I know they're a conscientious person. I know they care. So it's up to you. I'm just sharing with you. I think some individuals need to be protected. Now, it depends on the situation. So my first response was, it depends. There's particulars. There's so many things to consider. So what to do is your own purity, and what's motivating you, what's the impetus, and I guess you could say how immediate and urgent it is, so then you calibrate your response accordingly. Now, obviously, if you see a little child playing in the street, here comes a car or something like that, you got to do something. You can't not do something. So it depends on the circumstance. What you do, what's appropriate. Then comes the ounce of prevention. I didn't notice it happening here, but there's some temples where they're very, very proactively conscientious about children have to be supervised because children are to be protected. And they say it, and they say it again. No children, you bring children, that's fine. Supervise them. Don't leave them unsupervised, because something could happen and then God forbid. And then everyone feels bad because there was negligence in the prevention department. So that's just an example for you. When you see some protection is needed, what are some of the measures of prevention? Not necessarily just children, but what are some of the measures of prevention that can be taken by you or others to see that at-risk situations are minimized? So when there's a community, then a culture in the community is towards purity and towards protecting of innocent people, for example. It's not the only thing, but it's one of the things. So be part of that which creates a culture of purity and invest in that. And when purity is there, then transformation becomes possible. Just the other day, I think it was Saturday, was the disappearance day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, right? Do you know who is Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Yes. So it was a disappearance day, and the person who was the invited speaker on his disappearance day was speaking about the time in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur lived. And there was it's a different situation, but the principle is there were people at risk. there the teachings of Lord Chaitanya had gone down and down and down, and more prevalent were deviated groups that were attracting followers, and the genuine teachings were kept inside temples, not being made available for the public, because the persons that had those pure teachings knew of their purity, and they didn't want to exhibit them before people that would tarnish them. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a reformer. So he put himself at risk, literally, to confront the deviated ones and to take the teachings that were being cloistered and made them available through the printing press and the massive book distribution and writings. But he started his work from very, very careful study of the Sandarbhas and the lineage, the tradition. So he connected with the tradition as well as with the modernity, he called it, and made it accessible to modern people. And it changed. It was protection. Now that's a great acharya, but the principle is understand tradition, understand what is to be done, and then have feelings of concern for those that are unprotected and being exposed to mishmash. And that's unfortunate, because sincere souls, if they don't have something genuine, they're going to be exposed to mishmash and get, go off in the wrong direction or miss the target. So how to not be a controlling type person and, instead being a wholesome type person. It's the challenge of life. So a lot depends on the circumstance when you see that the protection is needed. The urgency, the depth, the scale, the particulars. That's wisdom. And the intelligence to make that decision, it comes from Super Soul. Were you here for the morning class? Okay. One of the slides was a Lutheran theologian that recently left this world, but we showed his picture and a statement that he made. When things need to be changed, please give me the serenity and the courage to make those changes. There are some things that I can't change, and let me have the serenity to not change those things that can't be changed, the courage to change those things that can be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. Yeah, it's a nice one, nice statement. I forget his name, Lutheran theologian. Yeah, they have a similar saying.
Lord, please give me the strength to change the things that I can. Peace to accept the things that I can't.
Okay, it's a Lutheran theologian's gift to the world and to the Alcoholics Anonymous folks. Okay. Yes.
Your previous answer is kind of similar to what I was pointing out recently. It's kind of like you need to go deeper into your chanting.
Yes.
And to go deeper and develop more rati or attraction, what
Yes.
you were saying.
Yes.
Basically, to have more faith, you basically need to have no hope except whatever to develop faith in.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's other things, but go ahead. I'll do the other things in a moment.
yeah, so you also need to have an acute awareness of your shortcomings or gifts you have given, basically. So that's humility.
Yes.
What you were alluding to.
Yes. Thank you.
Then I was wondering about this recently. So, how do you develop this humility? Is it just that you, by your sincere efforts and prayers, you are in best of this humility, or what's the process? Or is there something else? How do we get this?
Well, the simple principle is two words: sadhu sangha. And sadhu sangha is a nice phrase. It's derived from Bhagavatam, from Kapila's teachings to his mother, Kapila Dev, to his mother Devahuti. And she wants to know, just in simple language, I'm not there yet, how do I get there? And his answer is sadhu sangha. It's not exactly how she says it, but, And then he expands on what sadhu sangha is. He says a number of other things. Then he goes 8 verses on what sadhu sangha is. What does it look like? What are the qualities of a sadhu? How does it impact you? So qualities are intrinsic to the soul, as love of Krishna is intrinsic to the soul, but it's covered, and it can become uncovered or awakened by sadhu sangha. What's sadhu sangha? Prabhupada's, when you see a spark, you fan it. He was moving his hand like this. That's sadhu sangha. You see a spark and you fan it. So the one who has the capacity to see a spark and is fanning it, that's sadhu sangha. And that spark can become a flame. Qualities are the quality of humility, and all other qualities are intrinsic to the soul. As love of God is intrinsic to the soul. Krishna prema is intrinsic to the soul. It's already there, but it's covered. So sadhu sangha helps it come out. So to develop the quality of humility, associate with sadhus, and they'll profile for you what humility is. Or if you want any quality, associate with those that have that quality. If you want to get warm, stand near a fire. You get warm. You want the quality of humility, associate with those that, not the false kind of humility, but the genuine kind, the soul kind of humility. They'll not only they'll teach you by example, but by your association with them, that will become your quality. It'll awaken within you through that association.
Songs are helpful, like Vaishnava songs, kind of some songs might be helpful.
Oh yes, but that's
But it's not long-lasting, consistent, and deep.
well. That's because we're conditioned. The potency is there. Supposing you stand next to a fire and you get warm, and then you walk around out in the cold and you get cold again. So that regular association awakens the qualities of the soul. So it's just taking Vaishnava songs, for example. So if you're attracted to Vaishnava songs, do a bunch of it over a period of time. And gradually those qualities will become your qualities because you're associating with those sadhus that wrote those songs. You start to develop some relationship with those sadhus that wrote those songs. And those qualities of those sadhus and the messages in their songs become your qualities. And that's not the only way, but that's one way.
So it's a gradual process.
Yes. Because otherwise, it's the sine curve. Unsteady, anishchita bhakti, unsteady. So how do you get steady? Purity. How do you get purity? Sadhu sangha, and in the association with sadhus, you do with sadhus what sadhus do. Bhajan, bhajana kriya. I'm just quoting messages from our acharyas.
So the bhajan again, like, do they feed off of each other, the
Yes.
quality and the chanting?
Yes. And so, like what you have here, here's an ashram, so you have the opportunity for others that some like reading, some like chanting, some like bhajan, and so you have the opportunity to be with others that are getting, at least moving towards the direction of purity. And you can feed off of that, which is the bhakti quality, knowing that as we're, anyway, so we're associating with the name, and we're associating with the authors, we're associating with the songwriters. And ideal is if there's somebody that is very gifted, whose heart is very pure, they're gifted in the teachings or they're gifted in the bhajans. What do you think? Back there, yeah. You have a what? Okay.
How did you handle like sickness, disease, that?
Well, I felt closer to my father than my mother for whatever the reason. And in part, we spent lots of time together doing different things. And I was the youngest son. I mean, because you're asking on a personal level. I was the youngest son, and the affection goes to the youngest commonly, as water goes to the lowest position. So the youngest, so there was affection. And my father died of cancer. He was a chain smoker, so he died of lung cancer. And the question specifically, that's the context, how did I handle it? Well, wasn't so mature at that stage, but I handled it by understanding two things. It wasn't unknown to him that you smoke, you're opening the cancer door. So each of us take responsibility for our actions, and he took responsibility for his actions, and he departed this world early because he couldn't control that, or chose to not control that smoking tendency. Wasn't exactly a chain smoker, but too much. So he accepted the consequences, and others were affected because of that. And then, I didn't feel badly towards him. It just, that was how I handled it. He got the consequence of the choices that he made, and that death is inevitable. Now, because I was a devotee when that happened, as are you, then I understood the destiny of the soul. It's not over. He was a good man, an honest man, a religious man. He had good character, good qualities. So he's gone to a good place. And that helped me. It's inevitable, and he's gone to a good place because he was a good man. Now, what that place is, I don't know. But a good place, because he was, by character, very good, very honest, etc., very caring, very charitable, religious. So that's how I handle it. The soul carried on to a good place. Anything else? Okay, we're done. Thank you very much, Prabhu.